The morning started quietly at the large office building. Sunlight poured through the tall windows, lighting up the clean, polished floors. People were moving around in their usual morning rush, talking softly or checking their phones. A new face appeared among the familiar crowd, a woman who looked a little nervous but determined. She was the new janitor, starting her first week at the office. Her name was never really mentioned, but everyone could see she carried herself with quiet confidence. Her uniform was neat, and her gloves were clean, showing she took pride in her work. She pushed her cleaning cart slowly down the long hallways, making sure to avoid bumping into anyone or making too much noise. She had learned from past experiences that first impressions mattered, and she wanted this job to start right. At first, most employees ignored her, too busy with their morning routines to notice someone new. Some glanced at her curiously, while a few whispered to their coworkers, wondering who the new janitor was. The woman kept her head down, focused on her tasks. She started with the main lobby, carefully sweeping and wiping surfaces. She smiled politely when people passed, and though her smile was small, it had a warmth that made a few people smile back. She knew that being friendly, even in small ways, could make the workplace easier. She also knew it would take time to earn respect. Not everyone welcomed her presence, though. In one of the offices near the elevators, a coworker who had been there for years watched her closely. This person didn't like change, didn't like anyone new coming in, and especially didn't like someone who seemed calm and confident. The bully, as she would later be known, had a habit of picking on people who were different, people who she thought were weaker or easier to scare. She had been at the office long enough to know the routine, and she felt the need to assert herself whenever she sensed a challenge. The new janitor's calm demeanor didn't intimidate her. In fact, it made her curious and a little frustrated. As the janitor moved through the hallways, she noticed small things that showed she cared about her work. She wiped fingerprints off the glass doors, straightened chairs in the waiting areas, and even picked up a stray piece of paper that someone had dropped near the reception. Each task was done quietly without making a fuss, but with clear attention to detail. A few employees noticed and nodded to her, showing a small sign of appreciation. These small gestures didn't go unnoticed by the janitor either. She had learned over the years that kindness could be found in unexpected places, and even a small smile from someone could make a day better. The office was large, with many floors and rooms. Each area had its own routine and its own set of challenges. The janitor had come prepared, carrying all the supplies she needed. She moved efficiently from one area to another, balancing her cleaning cart and making sure not to spill anything. Her movements were smooth, almost like she had done this 100 times before. She was new to this office, but she had experience, and it showed. Despite the nervousness she felt inside, she worked steadily, not rushing, and not letting the presence of others distract her. In the corner of the lobby, the bully continued to watch. She noticed the janitor's confidence and the way people responded to her politeness. She didn't like that people were noticing someone else. It made her feel invisible, and she wasn't used to feeling that way. Her thoughts began to drift, imagining ways to assert control, to show that she was still the one who mattered in this workplace. The bully didn't speak to anyone about it yet. She was watching, waiting, studying the janitor, trying to figure out if she could intimidate her. There was a tension building quietly in the background, one that no one else seemed to notice yet. The janitor, focused on her work, remained unaware that she was being watched with such intensity. The day went on, and the janitor continued with her tasks. She cleaned the kitchen area, refilled the soap dispensers in the restrooms, and made sure the trash bins were emptied. Her work was thorough, done with care, and with a sense of pride. She knew that being thorough in small tasks showed respect for the space and for the people who used it. Every detail mattered, from the streak-free windows to the neatly arranged chairs. She also knew that people often judged her by how visible her work was, so she made sure even the small, unseen areas were taken care of. Her attention to detail was a quiet statement of who she was: competent, careful, and reliable. Around midday, a few employees came out of their offices for lunch. They noticed the janitor and greeted her politely. She returned the greetings, smiling, and offered a few friendly words. Some of them even asked how she was finding the new job. She answered honestly, saying that it was a lot to learn but that she was enjoying it so far. Her answers were simple yet genuine. People appreciated honesty, and even a brief conversation made her feel a little more connected to the office. She began to realize that, even though some people might not like her, there were others who respected her presence and her work. The bully continued to watch from a distance, her frustration growing. She didn't like seeing the janitor interact with others, especially when those interactions were positive. It made the bully feel powerless in a situation where she wanted to feel dominant. She began planning small ways to unsettle the janitor, thinking about what might annoy her or make her uncomfortable. The bully was patient, waiting for the right moment, and she was sure one would come soon. The janitor, meanwhile, remained focused, unaware of the brewing tension. She moved from one task to the next, methodical and precise, carrying out her work as if nothing could disturb her. By the end of the morning, the janitor had completed most of her tasks. She pushed her cart back to the storage area, making sure everything was organized and in its place. She took a moment to rest, leaning slightly on the cart and taking a deep breath. The first part of the day had gone well, and she felt a small sense of accomplishment. Even though she was new and there were challenges ahead, she was managing them with patience and care. She reminded herself that work was just one part of life and that she could handle whatever came her way, as long as she stayed focused and calm. As she prepared for the afternoon tasks, she noticed small details about the office that others might not see. A scuff on the wall, a chair out of place, a coffee stain on the floor. Each small thing she corrected was a silent message. She cared about her work and the environment she was in. Her pride was quiet, not loud or boastful, but evident in the way she moved and handled each task. It was a kind of strength that came from experience, from knowing what mattered, and from understanding that respect was earned through actions, not words. Throughout the morning, the janitor showed more than just competence. She showed patience, resilience, and a calm confidence. These qualities were visible to anyone who took the time to notice. While the bully continued to plot from afar, the janitor remained steady, focused, and composed. She didn't seek attention or approval, but she naturally commanded respect through her actions. Even without speaking much, she left an impression on the people around her. A quiet reminder that some strength doesn't need to be loud to be felt. By lunchtime, the office had settled into a quiet rhythm. People were eating, talking in small groups, or working quietly at their desks. The janitor moved back to the areas that needed attention, making sure everything was clean and in order. Her work was seamless, a combination of skill, patience, and dedication. No one could deny that she cared about the job she was doing. Even the bully noticed, though she tried not to show it. Deep down, the bully felt a mix of irritation and envy, unsure how to approach someone who didn't respond to intimidation. The morning ended with the janitor finishing her rounds and checking her cart. Everything was in order, supplies replenished, and tools cleaned. She took a final look at the office, making sure no detail had been overlooked. She smiled quietly to herself, satisfied with the work she had done. Despite the challenges she sensed were coming, she felt ready to face them. She knew that patience, skill, and calm confidence would carry her through, and she was prepared to prove herself, quietly but effectively, in this new environment. Her first day had only begun, and already she had shown that she was someone who could not be underestimated. The afternoon started with a gentle hum of activity in the office. People had returned from lunch, carrying coffee cups and papers, settling back into their routines. The new janitor moved through the hallways with her cleaning cart, careful to avoid disturbing anyone. She adjusted the sleeves of her uniform and checked her list of tasks for the day. Everything was going smoothly, or so it seemed. The quiet rhythm of the office was about to shift. The bully had been watching all morning, simmering quietly. She was frustrated by the janitor's calm confidence and the way others seemed to respect her without her having to say much. It bothered her deeply. She had always been the center of attention in this office, and now this new person was quietly taking that place without even trying. The bully's mind raced with ideas on how to regain control and remind everyone of her dominance. It wasn't enough to just be present. She wanted to intimidate to make sure the janitor felt out of place. She waited for the right moment. That moment came when the janitor was alone in a storage room, restocking cleaning supplies. The door was slightly ajar, allowing the bully to slip in unnoticed. She stood behind a shelf watching the janitor carefully. The janitor was focused on organizing bottles of cleaning solution and wiping down the shelves. She didn't notice the shadow moving nearby. The bully's eyes narrowed, and she decided to make a small move first, just to see how the janitor would react. The bully knocked over a small stack of rags near the janitor's feet. The janitor looked down, startled for a moment, but quickly bent to pick them up. She smiled politely as if the incident was nothing more than a minor inconvenience. The bully was frustrated. The janitor didn't react with fear or anger. This only fueled the bully's desire to escalate. She wanted the janitor to feel uneasy, to know that she could not simply go unnoticed. As the janitor continued her work, the bully moved closer, making subtle comments under her breath, hoping the janitor would hear them. "Watch yourself," she muttered, barely loud enough for anyone else to notice. The janitor paused for a second, looking in the direction of the voice, but she didn't respond. She continued organizing the shelves, calm and composed. Her body language showed no fear, no hesitation, and no anger. She was focused entirely on her work, aware of the bully but choosing not to react. The bully grew impatient. She wanted a stronger reaction, something that would make her feel powerful again. She stepped closer and leaned casually against the shelf. "You think you can just walk in here and take over?" she said in a low, mocking tone. The janitor looked up, her eyes meeting the bully's. Her expression remained neutral, showing neither fear nor anger, only quiet determination. The bully's words hung in the air, but the janitor didn't give her the satisfaction of a response. She turned back to her work, slowly and deliberately, signaling that the bully's attempts to intimidate her were failing. Frustration built in the bully. She had not faced someone like this before. Most people would have reacted with fear, anger, or at least surprise. But the janitor was different. She carried herself with an invisible shield, one built from years of experience and self-respect. The bully's mind raced, trying to come up with a plan that would finally make the janitor uneasy. She glanced around to see if anyone was watching. A few co-workers were nearby, pretending not to notice, but that only made her more determined. She wanted to assert control without drawing attention, to make the janitor feel vulnerable while keeping herself above scrutiny. The bully's next move was bolder. She reached out and intentionally brushed against the janitor as she passed by, a small, aggressive gesture meant to startle her. The janitor felt the contact but didn't flinch. Instead, she stepped aside smoothly, continuing her task as if nothing had happened. Her calm reaction only angered the bully further. She had expected at least a small reaction, maybe a startled look or a tense movement. But the janitor's composure was unshakable. The office seemed to notice the tension between the two. Some employees whispered quietly to each other, curious about what was happening. The janitor remained professional, continuing her work without giving the bully any satisfaction. She moved to another part of the storage room, checking the inventory and making sure everything was in order. Each action was deliberate, showing competence and focus. The bully's attempts to intimidate her had failed so far, and it was clear that the janitor would not respond in the way she expected. The bully grew reckless. She began to make snide remarks, loud enough for the janitor to hear this time. "You really think this is your place?" she sneered. The janitor looked up once, met her gaze and smiled politely, almost as if she were amused by the bully's efforts. The smile was calm, not mocking, but it carried a quiet strength that made it clear she would not be intimidated. The bully froze for a moment, realizing that her words were ineffective. The janitor's confidence was like a wall, impenetrable and steady. The bully, unwilling to back down, decided to escalate further. She waited for the janitor to pick up a bucket and approached from behind. Just as she was about to say something threatening, the janitor turned suddenly, almost instinctively, and looked over her shoulder. Her eyes met the bully's, steady and unwavering. There was no fear, no anger, only a calm awareness. The bully felt a flicker of doubt, realizing that the janitor was prepared for confrontation, even if it was subtle and quiet. This realization made her hesitate, unsure of how to proceed. The janitor continued her work, moving to mop the floor near the entrance to the storage room. She worked slowly, deliberately, ensuring the floor was clean and dry. Each movement was controlled, precise, and professional. She knew that her composure spoke louder than any words. The bully watched, increasingly frustrated that she could not provoke a reaction. The janitor's calmness was like a mirror, reflecting the bully's insecurity and impatience back at her. Nearby coworkers continued their work, some watching quietly, others pretending not to notice. The tension in the storage room was palpable, but the janitor remained unshaken. She moved methodically, completing her tasks with focus and care. She knew that reacting emotionally would give the bully the satisfaction she sought. Instead, she chose patience, using her professionalism and composure as a shield. It was clear that she had encountered difficult people before and knew how to handle them without escalating the situation unnecessarily. The bully's frustration reached a peak. She wanted to make a statement, to assert dominance, but every attempt was met with calm resistance. She leaned against a shelf, crossing her arms, and stared at the janitor, trying to intimidate her with sheer presence. The janitor paused for a moment, looked around the room, and continued her work without acknowledging the bully. This silent resistance was more powerful than any words could have been. It sent a message. She would not be bullied, she would not react out of fear, and she would continue to do her job with dignity. As the afternoon wore on, the bully realized that the janitor was not going to react the way she expected. Her efforts to provoke a response had failed. The janitor's quiet confidence and professionalism had turned the situation into a test of patience, one that she was quietly losing. The bully's energy was draining, and she began to question whether her approach was working at all. The janitor, on the other hand, remained steady, focused, and composed, showing that true strength often comes from self-control and confidence rather than aggression. Eventually, the bully backed away slightly, unsure of what to do next. The janitor continued her tasks without missing a beat, her calmness unbroken. The tension remained, but it was now clear who held the quiet power in the room. The janitor's presence commanded respect through her actions, her focus, and her composure. The bully realized that intimidation would not work here, and the subtle shift in power was unmistakable. By the end of the afternoon, the janitor had finished most of her tasks, leaving the storage room neat and organized. She checked her supplies, ensuring everything was in order, and pushed her cart out into the hall. The bully watched her leave, frustrated and uncertain, realizing that the day had not gone as she had hoped. The janitor had navigated the afternoon with skill, patience, and quiet strength, showing that she was not someone who could be easily intimidated. The office returned to its normal rhythm, but the tension lingered. The bully's frustration simmered quietly, while the janitor moved through the hallways with calm confidence. She knew that this was only the beginning, that more challenges would come, but she felt ready. Her patience, professionalism, and self-respect had carried her through a difficult afternoon, and she was prepared to face whatever came next. The day had tested her, and she had proven that quiet strength often speaks louder than any words or threats. Her first confrontation with the bully had ended, not with anger or conflict, but with dignity and calm, setting the stage for the events yet to come. The morning after her first full day, the janitor arrived at the office early, before most of the employees. She liked the quiet hours when the building was almost empty, giving her time to organize and plan her work for the day. She moved carefully through the hallways, her cart in tow, checking that all the supplies were in order. Everything was neat, everything in place, and for the moment the building felt calm. But she knew that calm could change at any moment. The bully was already at her desk, waiting for the day to begin. She had spent the previous afternoon simmering over how ineffective her attempts had been. The janitor's calm confidence had unnerved her, and she had not expected that. She watched quietly from her chair, waiting for an opportunity to assert herself, to make her presence known and remind everyone that she was the one in control. She had no intention of letting the janitor go through her day unbothered. As the office slowly filled with employees, the bully's impatience grew. She watched the janitor push her cart down the hall, cleaning the windows near the reception area. The janitor moved carefully, her actions precise and deliberate. She smiled politely at anyone who glanced her way, showing respect without seeking approval. It was exactly the kind of composure that frustrated the bully the most. The janitor's calm demeanor, her focus on her work, and her quiet confidence made it impossible for the bully to find an easy target. Finally, the bully saw her chance. The janitor was near the break room, gathering cleaning supplies, and the hallway was empty except for a few people at their desks. The bully approached from behind, trying to make a small show of dominance. She stepped close enough that the janitor could feel her presence, and then she brushed against her intentionally, hoping to startle her. The janitor turned slightly, acknowledged the touch with a polite nod, and continued her task without missing a beat. The bully's plan was failing before it had even begun. Frustrated, the bully decided to escalate. She blocked the janitor's path, leaning slightly against the doorway to the break room. "You think you can just walk around here like you own the place?" she sneered. Her voice carried enough to draw the attention of a few nearby employees, who glanced up curiously. The janitor looked up at her calmly, her expression neutral but firm. She didn't speak, didn't flinch, and didn't allow herself to be intimidated. Her steady gaze was a silent challenge, a clear message that she would not react to threats. The bully, sensing the growing attention, decided to push further. She jabbed the janitor lightly with her elbow, a small but aggressive gesture meant to provoke a reaction. The janitor, however, remained composed. She took a small step to the side, maintaining her balance and control, and continued her work. She didn't respond verbally or physically. The simplicity of her actions, her ability to stay calm under pressure, made the bully increasingly agitated. The small crowd that had gathered watched quietly, unsure of what would happen next. Feeling that subtle intimidation wasn't enough, the bully stepped closer and raised her voice. "You need to learn your place around here," she shouted. The janitor stopped for a brief moment, her hands gripping the cleaning cart lightly. She looked around the room, noticed the coworkers who were watching, and then slowly bent down to pick up a piece of trash from the floor. Her actions were deliberate and calm, almost serene, as if the bully's words and presence were nothing more than background noise. The silence in her response was more powerful than any verbal comeback the bully could have delivered. The tension in the room was palpable. The bully's face turned red with anger and embarrassment, realizing that her usual tactics had no effect. The janitor's calm resilience was unexpected and unnerving. The people nearby began to murmur quietly to each other, some expressing admiration for the janitor's composure, others just curious about the unfolding confrontation. It was clear to everyone present that the bully's attempts to dominate were failing, and the janitor's quiet confidence was winning respect. Determined to assert control, the bully tried a more physical approach. She stepped closer, positioning herself to shove the janitor aside. The janitor sensed the movement immediately. Her body shifted slightly, maintaining balance and stability, ready for any sudden force. She didn't flinch, didn't raise her voice, and didn't escalate the situation. Instead, she stayed grounded, showing that her composure was not a weakness but a strength. The bully's aggression met resistance, not in a fight, but in the janitor's unwavering presence. The nearby employees watched in tense silence as the bully continued to try and provoke a reaction. The janitor's calmness, her quiet control of her movements, and her refusal to respond with anger or fear made it increasingly difficult for the bully to continue. The janitor's strength was in her patience, her professionalism, and her quiet dignity. It was a kind of power that could not be challenged with simple aggression or intimidation. Finally, the bully lost her temper. She reached out and pushed the janitor in the shoulder with more force than before. The janitor stumbled slightly but quickly regained her balance. Her face remained calm, her eyes steady. She took a deliberate step back, adjusted her grip on the cleaning cart, and looked the bully directly in the eyes. The message was clear. She would not be intimidated, she would not retaliate with aggression, and she would continue her work with the same dignity and professionalism she had always shown. The sudden escalation drew the attention of the office manager, who had been passing by. She rushed over, concerned about the confrontation. The bully turned her attention to the manager, realizing that her behavior could have consequences. The janitor, still composed, took a moment to straighten her uniform and continue her task. Her calm reaction, even in the face of physical intimidation, made it obvious to everyone present that she was the one handling the situation with maturity and control. The bully, now flustered and unsure of what to do, stepped back slightly. The janitor moved to finish her cleaning, focusing on the task at hand rather than engaging further. The office manager intervened, speaking to the bully firmly, and the tense moment began to dissipate. The janitor's composure remained unshaken, her focus on her work demonstrating that her strength lay not in confrontation, but in her ability to remain calm and professional. By the time the morning ended, the janitor had completed her tasks, despite the bully's attempts to unsettle her. The employees who had witnessed the confrontation whispered quietly among themselves, expressing respect for the janitor's calm and professional handling of the situation. The bully, frustrated and embarrassed, retreated to her desk, realizing that her attempts to dominate had failed. The janitor, meanwhile, continued her work with quiet confidence, showing that true strength comes from patience, dignity, and self-control, not aggression or intimidation. The janitor took a moment to check her supplies and organize her cart, preparing for the rest of the day. She knew that the bully would likely continue to test her, but she felt ready. Her composure had carried her through the first confrontation, and she was confident that patience, professionalism, and quiet strength would see her through whatever came next. The first major incident had occurred, and the janitor had proven that she was not someone who could be easily intimidated. The office had witnessed her dignity, and it was clear that respect was slowly shifting in her favor. The day continued, the tension lingering in the background, but the janitor moved through it with the calm determination that had always been her greatest strength. The day had settled into its usual rhythm after the morning's tense confrontation. The janitor moved through the office quietly, continuing her tasks with calm precision. She refilled soap dispensers, wiped down tables, and carefully cleaned the break room. The bully had retreated to her desk, still fuming, unsure of how to respond to the janitor's composure. Despite the previous incident, the janitor remained focused on her work, showing no anger or fear, only quiet determination. As the janitor pushed her cart down the hallway, she heard the low rumble of motorcycles outside. It was unusual for this time of day, and she paused for a moment, glancing out the window. Several motorcycles pulled up near the entrance of the building. A small crowd of people outside watched with curiosity. The janitor's heart stayed calm, but her awareness sharpened. She recognized the sound immediately, knowing who it could be. She finished her task in the hallway methodically, without rushing, keeping her movements smooth and controlled. Inside the lobby, the janitor noticed some employees whispering to each other, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and surprise. No one said anything aloud, but the tension in the room shifted slightly. The janitor pushed her cart toward the storage room, where she could check supplies and ensure everything was in order. She moved calmly, but her mind remained alert, ready for any unexpected situations. She had always known how to handle challenging moments, and today was no different. The lobby doors opened, and a large figure stepped inside, causing a small stir among the employees. The janitor's husband had arrived. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and exuded a quiet authority that was impossible to ignore. His presence commanded attention without a word. The janitor glanced briefly in his direction, her expression calm, as if his arrival was expected yet not alarming. She returned her focus to her tasks, continuing to move with confidence and purpose. The bully, sitting at her desk, was the first to notice him. Her eyes widened slightly, and she froze. She had not expected anyone to witness her previous actions, let alone someone so imposing. The janitor's husband moved through the lobby with deliberate steps, scanning the area as he went. His gaze fell on the janitor briefly, a subtle nod exchanged between them, a silent communication that spoke of trust and understanding. The bully's confidence wavered, realizing that she had no idea who the janitor's support system included. The janitor continued her work, moving methodically through the break room and organizing cleaning supplies. She didn't speak, didn't show any fear or tension, but her movements were precise and steady. The bully's attempts to dominate had failed, and now, with the janitor's husband present, the atmosphere shifted entirely. The bully felt a mix of fear and disbelief. She had misjudged the situation completely, assuming the janitor would be alone and vulnerable. The janitor's husband approached the area where the incident had occurred earlier. He observed the hallway, noting the positions of the employees and the bully. His presence alone caused the bully to step back slightly, her usual arrogance replaced by uncertainty. He didn't need to speak, didn't need to raise his voice. His calm, commanding demeanor was enough to convey that any further aggression would have consequences. The janitor moved past him, her movements fluid and composed, continuing her work as if nothing had changed. Yet the tension in the room was undeniable. Employees nearby watched quietly, sensing the unspoken authority the janitor's husband carried. Some had seen him before, others were new, but all recognized the effect he had on the room. The bully, realizing she had been completely unprepared for this development, tried to regain control but found herself hesitant. Her usual tactics of intimidation and aggression had no effect, and now she was unsure how to proceed. The janitor, maintaining her calm, gave nothing away, her focus entirely on her responsibilities. The janitor's husband stayed a short distance away, observing the interactions without intervening immediately. His presence was protective yet controlled. He understood that the janitor did not need him to fight her battles. She had already proven her strength. His role was to ensure that the bully could no longer escalate the situation without accountability. The bully sensed this, and the shift in power became clear. The office environment, once filled with tension, now leaned toward respect for the janitor. The bully tried to speak, her voice shaking slightly. I didn't mean to," she started, but she stopped mid-sentence, realizing that her words had no power in this moment. The janitor's husband looked at her steadily, and the silence spoke louder than any reprimand. The bully's attempt to assert dominance had completely backfired. Her actions earlier in the day were exposed, not through confrontation, but through the janitor's calm resilience and the silent authority of her husband. The janitor moved toward the storage room, organizing cleaning supplies and checking the cart. Her husband followed at a respectful distance, giving her space while remaining close enough to intervene if necessary. The dynamic was clear. She had proven her strength, and he was there to support her without taking over. The bully, now standing awkwardly near her desk, could see the shift in respect and authority. The janitor had faced intimidation and emerged with dignity, and the presence of her husband made any further attempts at aggression unthinkable. A few co-workers whispered among themselves, expressing quiet admiration for the janitor's composure and the way she had handled the situation. They noted the subtle but unmistakable change in the office atmosphere. The bully, previously confident and aggressive, was now hesitant and unsure. The janitor continued her work, her focus unwavering, her calmness a clear message that she would not be bullied or intimidated. The janitor's husband stayed long enough to ensure that the tension had eased. He nodded briefly at the janitor, a silent affirmation of their mutual understanding. She acknowledged the nod with a small, composed smile, returning her attention to the cleaning tasks at hand. The lobby, once charged with tension, now felt stable. The bully remained at her desk, subdued, realizing that her previous actions had failed, and that the janitor was not someone to underestimate. As the day continued, the janitor moved efficiently through the office, completing her rounds with quiet confidence. The presence of her husband had changed the dynamic without any need for confrontation. The bully's attempts at intimidation had been neutralized, not through violence or anger, but through patience, dignity, and silent authority. The janitor demonstrated that true strength came from composure and professionalism, while her husband's presence reinforced the protection and respect she commanded. By the end of the afternoon, the office had returned to a normal rhythm. The janitor finished her tasks, organized her cart, and ensured that everything was in its proper place. She moved with calm efficiency, her confidence intact. The bully, humbled by the experience, remained at her desk, aware that she had underestimated someone who possessed quiet strength and resilience. The janitor's husband prepared to leave, giving a final, reassuring nod to her. She watched him go, her focus returning fully to her work. The events of the day had reinforced her belief in patience, professionalism, and dignity, showing that strength often manifests quietly, through confidence, composure, and unwavering focus. The next morning, the office was filled with a quiet tension. Everyone seemed to be aware of the previous day's events, though most tried to go about their work as usual. The janitor arrived early, as she always did, pushing her cart with calm precision. She moved through the hallways methodically, checking supplies, wiping down surfaces, and making sure everything was in its proper place. Her focus remained on her tasks, yet she was aware of the subtle glances from coworkers, some curious, some quietly admiring. She moved with confidence, each step deliberate, every action purposeful. The bully, still shaken by the previous day, arrived later, her usual swagger replaced by a hesitant and uncertain demeanor. She sat at her desk, pretending to work, but her eyes kept darting toward the janitor. She watched as the janitor moved through the lobby, checking the floors and organizing cleaning supplies. The janitor's composure, her calm efficiency, and the subtle strength she carried were unmistakable. The bully felt a mix of fear, embarrassment, and frustration. She realized that she had underestimated the janitor completely. By mid-morning, the bully decided to confront the janitor again, but this time with more caution. She had learned that aggressive actions in the presence of witnesses or the janitor's husband could backfire. She approached slowly, trying to gauge the janitor's reaction. "You think yesterday made a difference?" she muttered under her breath, trying to sound confident. The janitor looked up briefly, meeting her gaze with the same calm, unwavering expression. She didn't speak, didn't flinch, and didn't allow herself to be intimidated. Her silence spoke volumes, showing that she would not be manipulated or provoked. The office manager, aware of the ongoing tension, had been observing quietly. She approached the janitor, offering a small nod of approval. The janitor responded with a polite smile, continuing her work without breaking her focus. The bully, noticing the support from authority, felt even more cornered. She had no clear path to assert dominance without drawing further scrutiny. The janitor's quiet confidence and the respect she commanded from both peers and management were making it increasingly difficult for the bully to act. Determined to regain some sense of control, the bully tried a subtler tactic. She began making passive-aggressive comments about the janitor's work, hoping to provoke a reaction. "Nice job cleaning, but don't you think that should be done differently?" she said, loud enough for nearby employees to hear. The janitor paused for a moment, adjusted her gloves, and smiled politely. "Thank you, I'll keep that in mind," she said calmly, her tone neutral but firm. The bully realized that her attempts at sarcasm were ineffective. The janitor's professionalism and calm demeanor neutralized every effort to intimidate her. The tension in the room grew as the bully tried to escalate in a more direct way. She stepped closer, attempting to create a physical presence that would feel threatening. The janitor sensed the movement immediately and adjusted her stance slightly, maintaining balance and control. She continued her task with calm precision, showing no fear. Her steady movements and unshakable composure were a clear message. Aggression would not work here. The bully's confidence faltered as she realized that she was facing someone who could not be easily unsettled. Nearby employees watched quietly, sensing the shift in power. The janitor's calm, methodical actions drew attention and admiration. The bully, once dominant in the office, now seemed small and uncertain. Her usual tactics of intimidation had failed, and she had no alternative. The janitor's quiet strength and professionalism had turned the situation completely, demonstrating that respect is earned through actions, not aggression. At that moment, the janitor's husband arrived again. His presence immediately changed the room's energy. He moved through the lobby with calm authority, scanning the area with a watchful eye. The bully froze, realizing that any further aggressive behavior would have consequences. The janitor continued her work, moving methodically through the hallways, and her husband followed at a respectful distance, ready to intervene if necessary. Their silent coordination was clear. She had the strength to handle herself, and he was there to provide support without taking over. The bully tried one last time to assert control, stepping closer and raising her voice slightly. "You think you're so tough?" she shouted. The janitor stopped for a brief moment, looked directly at her, and then resumed her work with deliberate calm. Her gaze was steady, her expression neutral, and her body language unshakable. The bully realized, in that moment, that she could not intimidate the janitor. The presence of her husband reinforced the boundaries, showing that any attempt at aggression would be met with immediate consequences. The office manager, seeing the potential for escalation, intervened. She addressed the bully firmly, making it clear that inappropriate behavior would not be tolerated. The bully, now fully aware that her actions had failed and that she was under scrutiny, stepped back, her anger and frustration giving way to resignation. The janitor continued her work, her composure intact, demonstrating that patience, professionalism, and calm confidence were more powerful than aggression. Employees began to express quiet support for the janitor, whispering among themselves about her resilience and the way she handled the confrontation. The bully, once a figure of intimidation, now seemed isolated and ineffective. The janitor's quiet strength had turned the tables completely. She had faced aggression and intimidation with dignity and professionalism, showing that true power often comes from calm confidence rather than confrontation. By the afternoon, the bully had retreated to her desk, subdued and uncertain. The janitor moved through the office with her usual efficiency, checking supplies, cleaning floors, and organizing areas that needed attention. Her calm presence and quiet confidence had restored balance to the office environment. The bully's previous attempts to dominate had failed, and the janitor's professional conduct had earned respect from both coworkers and management. The janitor's husband prepared to leave, giving a final nod to her as he passed. She acknowledged him with a composed smile, returning to her tasks with the same steady focus she had maintained throughout the confrontation. The office atmosphere, once tense and uncertain, had shifted in favor of respect and professionalism. The bully remained at her desk, reflecting on her actions and the consequences of underestimating someone with quiet strength and unwavering composure. By the end of the day, the janitor had completed her tasks, organized her cleaning supplies, and ensured that everything was in order. The office had returned to its normal rhythm, but the memory of the confrontation lingered as a lesson in dignity, patience, and the power of calm confidence. The bully had learned that intimidation would not work against someone who carried themselves with professionalism and self-respect. The janitor had proven that strength comes not from aggression, but from composure, focus, and unwavering integrity. The events of the day reinforced the message that true respect is earned through actions, patience, and quiet strength. The following morning, the office had a sense of calm it hadn't experienced in weeks. The janitor arrived early as usual, moving with her cart through the quiet hallways. She was methodical, checking cleaning supplies and wiping down surfaces, keeping everything in order. Her composure was steady, almost serene, and her calm demeanor set the tone for the day. Employees who had witnessed the previous confrontations observed her from afar, some whispering quietly, others silently admiring her patience and professionalism. The bully arrived later, her usual confidence replaced by a noticeable hesitation. She sat at her desk, watching the janitor move efficiently through the office, but now there was a wariness in her movements. Her previous attempts at intimidation had failed, and the presence of the janitor's husband during the confrontations had added another layer of accountability she hadn't anticipated. She realized that her behavior was no longer tolerated and that her position in the office hierarchy had shifted. The janitor continued her routine, moving from one area to another, cleaning, organizing, and ensuring everything was in its proper place. Her actions were deliberate and calm, demonstrating that professionalism and focus could stand stronger than aggression. The office began to feel the influence of her quiet strength. Where the bully once created tension and fear, now there was respect and acknowledgement of the janitor's competence. Her ability to maintain composure under pressure had transformed the atmosphere entirely. By mid-morning, the bully attempted to make light conversation, trying to regain a semblance of control or camaraderie. "Looks like you've got this place organized," she said, her tone uncertain. The janitor paused for a moment, looked up, and offered a polite, neutral smile. "Thank you. I just try to keep things in order," she replied calmly. Her response was friendly but non-confrontational, maintaining professionalism without inviting further conflict. The bully noticed how unshakable the janitor remained, and the realization settled that aggression and intimidation would no longer yield results. The office manager made a point to walk through the hallways, checking in on staff and operations. She stopped briefly near the janitor's work area, giving a nod of approval and appreciation. The janitor acknowledged it with a small, composed smile, continuing her tasks with the same meticulous care. Employees around them noticed the subtle acknowledgement and began to recognize the janitor's role as a stabilizing force in the office. Her consistent professionalism contrasted sharply with the bully's previous behavior, further reinforcing the respect she had earned. The bully, feeling the shift, hesitated at her desk. She wanted to act to regain control, but she realized that any attempt to undermine the janitor now would only draw more attention and scrutiny. The janitor's quiet authority, reinforced by her calm confidence and the support of management, made any aggressive action unwise. Slowly, the bully began to retreat into a more passive role, observing the janitor without confrontation. The power dynamic had shifted entirely, with respect gradually replacing fear. As the day progressed, the janitor continued her work efficiently. She cleaned the break room, organized storage areas, and checked on all supplies, her focus unwavering. Her husband had not needed to intervene further, but his presence during previous incidents had provided a protective backdrop that allowed her to handle situations confidently. The employees began to adjust their perceptions as well, seeing that calm strength and consistent professionalism were more valuable than loud dominance or intimidation. Later in the morning, the bully approached the janitor cautiously. I just wanted to say I'm sorry for yesterday," she said, her voice quiet and tentative. The janitor looked up from her task, her expression calm and composed. "Thank you. I appreciate that," she replied politely, keeping her tone neutral yet sincere. The apology, though small, marked a turning point. It was a recognition of the janitor's resilience and strength, and an acknowledgement that previous behavior had been unacceptable. With that small reconciliation, the office began to settle into a more harmonious rhythm. Employees moved through their tasks with less tension, the previous day's confrontations fading into lessons about respect, professionalism, and the importance of calm composure. The janitor continued her work methodically, demonstrating that dignity, patience, and quiet authority could reshape even the most difficult situations. The bully, now subdued and more thoughtful, began to interact with colleagues more respectfully, understanding that aggression would not earn respect. By the afternoon, the office atmosphere had completely shifted. The janitor had completed all her tasks, leaving the building spotless and organized. She moved with ease, her cart neatly stocked, her work meticulous. Employees whispered quietly among themselves, acknowledging her calm authority and professional conduct. Even the bully observed, recognizing that the janitor's presence had changed the office dynamic, earning respect without a single act of aggression. The janitor's husband returned briefly to check on her progress and offered a nod of quiet approval. She smiled back, a subtle acknowledgement of their mutual understanding and support. His presence had been a shield, yes, but her own strength, patience, and professionalism had been the true force in resolving the conflict. The bully watched quietly from her desk, no longer attempting to assert dominance, understanding that respect was earned through actions, composure, and consistent professionalism. By the end of the day, the janitor had finished her final rounds. She checked every corner, ensuring floors were clean, supplies were organized, and the office was in perfect order. Her work had been meticulous and steady throughout, demonstrating a quiet resilience and confidence that could not be shaken. The bully had retreated completely from any attempts at confrontation, having learned that intimidation could not overcome patience, professionalism, and integrity. The office, once tense and filled with uncertainty, had become a place of respect and quiet productivity. The janitor's calm authority, reinforced by her methodical work and unwavering focus, had transformed the environment. Employees moved through their day with a new sense of stability, understanding the power of composure, patience, and professionalism. The bully had learned her lesson, and the janitor's reputation as a strong, capable, and dignified presence was firmly established. As the janitor pushed her cart toward the storage room one final time, she reflected briefly on the past days. Each challenge she had faced had been met with patience and calm determination. The confrontations, the subtle threats, and the intimidation had all been handled with composure. She had maintained her dignity, completed her work to the highest standard, and earned respect without a single act of aggression. The office now recognized that true strength comes from quiet confidence, professionalism, and unwavering focus. The janitor's husband gave a final wave as he left, a silent acknowledgement of their shared understanding and trust. She watched him go, feeling confident in her own ability to navigate the office environment and any challenges that might arise in the future. The bully remained at her desk, subdued and contemplative, understanding that actions speak louder than threats, and respect is earned through consistent professionalism and composure. By the time the workday ended, the office was calm, orderly, and productive. The janitor had not only completed her tasks but had transformed the office dynamic entirely. The bully's attempts at aggression were neutralized, replaced with respect and recognition of the janitor's quiet strength. The employees, managers, and even the bully herself had learned a valuable lesson. Patience, dignity, and professionalism are more powerful than intimidation or anger. The janitor had proven that true strength lies in composure, focus, and the quiet confidence to face any challenge with integrity and resilience.